we're going to go ahead and kind of get started. Now that everybody's mostly got their food. Yeah, turn it up a little bit. Is there a way to do that? I guess I'll just have to be a little louder. Try to get this a little closer to me. So, yeah. So for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Brandon Harris. My mom, Ms. Destiny Harris, gave the first health talk about 3 weeks ago. And I'm going to be kind of following up on that. So like I said, my name is Brandon Harris, and I was born and raised here in Mobile, Alabama, well across the bay. This isn't Mobile. Somebody's going to correct me on that, so. But, yeah. And so if you recall what my mom was talking about last week, about giving her testimony about the health journey, you got to hear a lot of my background and what our health journey was through her, or what my health journey was through her whenever I was very young. So I'm going to kind of pick up. Oh wow! So it does go there. Okay.
Keep talking.
Yes, sir. So I'm going to kind of pick up where she left off. So if you kind of recall, she talked about whenever, when I was a baby, and then whenever, what the struggles I had with school and stuff like that. And that was a big part of, kind of my health journey, was the struggle I had with thinking in general. I was considered very bright, but it never reflected on my test scores and things of that nature. But that kind of really changed whenever we became vegetarians around my senior year. It started to kind of change where I was actually making good grades for once in the senior year, but it really showed up whenever, after 2 years of being vegetarian, I went off to a rise where I got a good Bible education, but also I spent those 3 months and the year after, I was very blessed, is what I'm trying to say. I was very blessed for them having a 5-star chef who was owned his own vegan restaurant, and he was only there for that semester. So I was just very, very fortunate to get a very good taste of what good vegetarian food was like. Not to mention all the potlucks that we had for the years prior. They kind of nudged us in the direction to being vegetarian. Because it wasn't a matter of taste at that point, both of the foods tasted good. It was a matter of whether or not I wanted to be healthy and go in this route with what God wanted to do. But one of the things that really solidified the diet for me was whenever I got into college after going to a rise, and had been vegetarian for about 1.5 to 2 years. I spent the next 2 years taking a lot of remedial courses in math, and eventually going all the way up to Calculus 3 and never making anything in any of my classes below a C. And actually, in the math classes specifically, I only made A's and B's. My only C was in my second grammar class, or my language class, which English kind of doesn't come naturally to me. So even having a C was a major victory for me. So after about spending the 2 years of getting all those victories and kind of going back over some common ground, I was in a place in my life where I wanted to make sure that I was kind of getting out on my own and kind of moving my life forward in that respects. And as I was kind of contemplating those things, God was directing me to read Adventist Home. Because the things I wanted in my future was to have my own house, to be a good husband, a good father to my children in the future. And one of the things I saw in Adventist Home that really stuck with me was this portion where she says, and it might even also be in child guidance, but she says that one of the first things that children should inherit from their parents is a good education on how to understand the mechanisms of their body and how to maintain it, or basically how to take care of themselves for health. And God proposed this kind of question to me back then, because we had been learning all of these things about health and everything, right? So we were like, well, medications, no. Doctors, no. Not to say that there's no place for doctors, but as far as chronic illnesses go, we've seen where there is a limitation and a lack in that regard, where it doesn't produce health. It only kind of perpetuates the problem. So God had kind of asked me this question, kind of put my feet to the fire and said, well, okay, if your son or daughter got very sick all of a sudden, what would your response be? And I was like, well, I wouldn't know what to do, so I would have to go to the, if I felt like it was a life-threatening illness, I would have to go to the doctors, and that didn't really sit well with me, especially after kind of seeing what Adventist Home was talking about, the man being the provider and the priest. And if you recall what the priests did back in the time of the Levites, they were actually the ones where you would go to make sure that you had leprosy, or if you had a tumor or something like that. Those things are actually specifically mentioned as things that the priest would identify and pray over. So there was definitely a health component to being the priest of the family, and I felt like I needed to be able to be more understanding of the human mechanisms, not only for myself, but to be a good leader for the family that I wanted to found. So with that kind of conviction on my heart, I was seeking out a place to learn these things. And I had gotten a little bit from Arise. It was mostly more theological, but definitely we had a class where we had learned about the 8 laws of health. And my sister at the time was actually just wanting to do somewhat of the same thing, and she and my mom had found a place called Uchee Pines. And so for the next 2 years there, I studied in the, I always want to say the LEs. I always want to think about lecture evangelist, but it stands for Lifestyle Educator. So I took the Lifestyle Educator course, and then I took the Lifestyle Counselor course. So I am a certified Lifestyle Counselor as well. So this is where I learned very much in depth about the 8 laws of health, and how to actually, for 6 months, I worked inside the clinic there, which they call like a sanitarium. And I helped with guests kind of reverse their lifestyle diseases. One of the big 3 that they do is heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. Those are the 3 that they really focus on, but there are all kinds of lifestyle issues that they can tackle. And I've actually had some guests, particularly an older man in his 70s or so, that he might have been older than that, but he had cancer, and he had actually a full reversal from that. He had been working on it for some time, but we helped him to knock it out before his biopsy, and the biopsy came back clean. As well as helping other people with their diabetes. Had quite a few patients who actually were able to lower their fasting insulin levels and things of that nature. I don't know how many of you know that actually diabetes is kind of inappropriately named. Diabetes means sweet blood, or sweet urine rather, because of the fact that the sugar would spill over into that. But actually it has almost nothing to do with the sugar in the blood. It has to do with the fact that you have insulin resistance. That's what's causing high blood sugars. And so really it's an insulin resistance disease is what it is. So anyway. I'm really kind of blowing through some of this. But anyway. I didn't even start it. I got 8 minutes? Okay, good. So, I said all that to say too that for the next, we're going to kind of structure this. It's going to be, Mom is going to kind of talk, and then, like for every month, there's going to be where we're all going to be going over these health principles. And so Mom will do one, and then a week, there's going to be like a week in between where there's nothing, and then it'll be me and Brad. So, and what I plan to do is I'm going to be going over hydrotherapy. That's something after Uchee Pines, I kind of began to specialize in. So I'm going to kind of start with that. Because I actually got the privilege of being able to speak in different churches and things after I went to Uchee Pines. I had a doctor friend who invited me on to his speaking engagements when he would speak on heart disease, diabetes, and cancer, as well as fasting. And I have things I can share on that as well from my time with him. But he would always have me kind of tag along and do the hydrotherapy portions, which I can actually come and do demos and show how to apply the water wisely, as Ellen White had said. That would be my definition of hydrotherapy, is anything in which you can use water wisely to get supernatural results. So, yeah. So, and that's what you can expect from me in the next, like it will be the next 2 weeks it will be mom, and then another 2 weeks it will be me. So every once a month, I'm going to be going over hydrotherapy with you. So that's what you have to expect from me. So yeah, I got a few minutes left. Does anybody want to know anything more in depth? Anybody have any questions? Did I go too fast?
What was your main duty in the Uchee Pines?
I was a lifestyle counselor. So they have us kind of very well-rounded in our training. So like we did cooking classes, like cooking demos. We would do the hydrotherapies in the evening. We would go over their treatment plans with the doctors to show them what the kitchen would be preparing for them and why. We would be going over their blood work, things of that nature. So I mean, literally would go. I wish more people would have taken up the sunshine portion. We had a solarium outside, which where you can do sunbathing. We went over obviously like certain temperance things where I like to think of temperance as anything that is too much is bad for you. Because a lot of people will take temperance and we'll talk about alcohol and things like that, where it's like there are certain things that you should absolutely abstain from, but then there are things that if you do it too much, it's toxic, even in certain amounts. So really just finding, doing what's good for you in moderation and doing anything that's bad for you, not at all. Then we talk about air, getting good quality air, spending time outside, getting good rest. A lot of times if you come to our health expos, we'll actually have a massage chair, so we'll kind of help the muscles rest. But as well as we can talk about daily, weekly, and well shoot, I feel like I skipped one there. But anyway, we can talk about Sabbath rest, we can talk about spiritual rest, as well as physical rest. And trusting God. And in fact, actually, and I know I can pull some up from The God Named Desire and one of Dr. Ornish's books, that actually belief, depending on what you believe, what your big paradigm of reality is, your brain doesn't really know the difference between what is the fantasies or what your mind conjures up and imagines, really anything different from reality. Your physical body will react to what you believe and act out your worldview. So much so, and I know that you know this, and we can go into more in depth in it, but I'll just kind of speak to it a little bit here, is that the placebo and nocebo effects are direct causes of this. If you believe you're going to get well, you get handed a sugar pill and you have trust in your physician, right? Then you can actually see your body heal itself because your body believes, your brain puts those things into action to activate all the things it needs to do to heal you. And anytime you get a cut or anything like that, by the grace of God, you're already going through a healing process. This is all supernatural because all of it is going against entropy. But also that, and what you may not know is that the opposite is also true. There's been many diagnoses or instances where somebody got their paperwork swapped in the hospital because they have the same name, so the guy reads his diagnosis that you're going to die in 3 weeks, but it's a totally different John Doe. But he dies anyway because his body told him he was. He believed it. And so it's very important what we do with just trusting in God and understanding what He says about reality, because if we don't, if we have lies and misconceptions here in this distorted reality, our body will start to try to make them reality, and we will be inharmonious with the world around us and destroy ourselves. And that's kind of somewhat of the gospel in a nutshell, is God's trying to save us from that fate. So I'll kind of leave it with that because I only have 15 minutes and now I want to give my brother his full time. So I do want to give him a bit of an introduction. He's a very strong man, both physically and mentally, and God has given him a big blessing in his journey of and what he does in exercise. And I always love that God kind of gave me this verse that goes very well with him, as it says that God made man upright. And I think that's a very guiding principle in what he's taught here with exercise. And so I'll pass it on to him so that he can explain a little bit further what that means.
Well, thank you for the introduction, Brandon. And really excited to be able to speak to you guys, not only today, but as Brandon mentioned, we're going to be speaking with you all pretty much us two once a month, and Mom will be doing it once a month. And as he said, I only have 15 minutes a day, so really I want to give you guys how God has blessed me, how He's used me, what He's taught me, kind of my story and how I've gotten into all of this. And there's plenty of other weeks where we'll dive deeper into what I'm going to be teaching you. But in a nutshell, today I'll be sharing with you my story. And what I do is I help people with chronic pain, if that interests you, posture, performance. And yes, that does have to do with that E right there, the exercise. But don't be scared of that word, because we're all designed for movement. Like, you look at our human bodies, it's designed to move. And it could be something as gentle, exercise could be something as gentle and restorative as laying in a certain position to change the position your joints are in. So it can be strenuous, it could be gentle. So for me, I've always been interested in anything to do with my body, sports. As a kid, in PE class, we had these jump rope competitions. Playing sports, you name it. I've just always enjoyed learning about the human body and exercising. And really, I don't know why it changes when we're adults, but it should be fun. That exercise word should be fun. It's just like, I see that word and I see play. For me, it's play. But when I was 11 years old, that's when I really started to get interested in like working out, doing push-ups, stuff like that. And it wasn't long after that as you guys may know, my dad owns his own business. We had a family friend, his name's Paul, and my dad encouraged him to start his own personal training business. And so he did, and Dad allowed him to use a space in the shop. And so every day after school, one day after school, I decided to just walk in, and I just hung out, and he'd end up teaching me stuff. I get to just learn and watch people train, and that became a daily habit after school. Right after I got off the school bus, I'd go hang out with Paul. And so he was like a mentor to me. And one day my mom, she had back pain that was leaving her bedridden some days. It was so bad. My dad had a bad car accident and had neck problems before then, but ended up having his whole neck fused, and he used to go to the chiropractor every single week just to function, to be able to do his job. And Paul, he had given us this book called Pain Free. My mom decided to crack open that book. Well, my dad probably encouraged her to, and then she did. And about 15 minutes later, from doing some of the simple stuff in this book, her pain went from I'm ready to go to the hospital, and surgery's like the last thing you want to do, but it's like whatever I got to do to get this pain gone. That's how bad it was. 15 minutes later, it was basically gone. It just went from a 10 to a 1. It wasn't noticeable, barely. And then my dad, similar story. He was going to the chiropractor every single week, started doing stuff from the book, and eventually no longer had to go every single week. It was like the glue that made those alignments actually stick and hold and stay for the long term. So, me being interested in exercise. I'm 16 at this point. You're still figuring out what you want to do with your life, go to college, what you want to learn. So I was interested in physical therapy. And so this kind of went right in that alley, right in that vein of what I was interested in, and I got to see it firsthand how it changed my family's life. And so I just started reading all these books and decided, and it just made sense. And I just decided that's what I wanted to do from there on. And so, fast forward a bit, graduate. I went to Amazing Facts Center of Evangelism. If you guys are familiar with the bachelor, I did do that. So that was part of my journey after graduating. And after that, I got a job as a personal trainer, built up some money, and once I built up enough money, I started these courses online. And all of my other friends were in college, and I was working, so I was like, well, I know this is what I want to do, so I ended up quitting my job so I could just be a full-time student like everyone else my age and just dive into this. And it wasn't long. When you're young, you're probably not as patient either, but there's a lot of passion. So I was like, man, this is great, but I want to be right there shadowing somebody in it day in and day out. I live and breathe it. And so I ended up reaching out to a bunch of clinics all over the country. And one of the headquarter clinics, or the headquarter clinic in San Diego, said, yeah, you can come on. We interviewed on Skype, and they said you could come out. It's an unpaid internship, so you just need a place to live. You need a part-time job to make some money, but you can come. And I had a buddy I shared this with, and he didn't really have much going on, so he was interested in coming out with me. So it was nice to not be alone, but I was looking for 3 weeks. I was trying to find a job, trying to figure out where I was going to live. Seems like you need a job, a place to live, and you need a place to live to be able to work, so I didn't know what to do. But I was looking for 3 weeks and said, I know this is what God wants me to do. And so I just packed up my little sports car and made the journey out to San Diego. I had no place to live, no part-time job, but I did have a friend that lived in LA, so that's the first place I went to, spent some time with him. And then that Sabbath morning, well, we did visit a church in San Diego on a Wednesday night to go check it out, and so we had a Bible study there. But that Sabbath morning, we were like, okay, we're leaving LA, we're going to San Diego, and from this moment forward, we don't know where we're going to stay that night. If it's our cars, so be it. And this is how I knew that I was right where God wanted me to be. I mean, He just gives us those winks. I mean, traveling all the way from Mobile, Alabama to San Diego, California, going to church that Sabbath, I ran into a couple who went to church in Cody Road here in Mobile. They had left the church, moved somewhere, and I was young at the time. I didn't remember where they moved. But apparently it was San Diego. I ran into them, and come to find out they didn't even go to that church every week. So it's another yes, exactly, because who would have thought that they would have been at that church that day all the way across the country. So I knew I was where God wanted me to be. Yes, there was a big Korean church, but they also had many different languages. So, and they're not Korean. So it's just, pretty cool that they were there that day. So I ended up being able to stay at the church that night. I ended up staying with them for a couple weeks. They gave us time to be able to look for jobs, and we were out there before the sun came up and just looking all day, putting in applications. And it's not what it used to be. You used to just come in and talk to a manager, and but now you had to apply online. So it was just a waiting game. But eventually, I got a phone call to get an interview with Subway, and I was like, okay, great. And then my buddy, he was like, man, he was happy for me. He was like, I need something too. And it could have been like 10 minutes later, he gets a phone call with Subway as well. So we both get this interview. And I'm not a shy person. I'm not afraid to talk. If you guys know my brother, he's definitely just like the louder personality. I maybe have friends that have that loud personality, but I don't have to be like center of attention in the room kind of personality. So this was kind of a little bit out of character for me. We go to have this interview, and my friend is going to be interviewed first, and he sits down to talk with her, and it's hard to know how much time passes by in those moments. But it wasn't long. It could have been like a minute that they were talking, maybe 2. And so I just felt compelled to get up and interrupt and talk to her and say, hey, you might want to interview both of us at the same time, because we're kind of in this unique situation. I kind of told her my story, how crazy we were coming out here doing this. And she said, you know what, I probably shouldn't do this because I know you're not going to work with us very long, but I really like you guys. And so she hired both of us right there on the spot. And so, again, I'll try to make this a long story short, but I don't want to miss the great stuff that God did do, and trying to fast forward some of these things. But once we got that job, they said, hey, you guys can find a place now, you got a job, you got a place, a way that you can make income. So again, it's when you run out of what you can do as a human physically, and then God has to do the rest. So again, I don't know where we're going to end up that night. Are we sleeping in our cars? I don't know. We had made some friends at the church already, and they had like a game night they're going to have at their house. So when we left the house we were staying in, that's where we went. And I spent the night playing some card games, some board games, and had some good fellowship. And we met my friend Jeremy, and she's like family now. I'd already met his wife at church, but he's a nurse, so we didn't always see him every Sabbath. And we were playing, and he was like getting to know us. And he was like, "Where are you guys staying?" And we're like, "Well, as of today, we don't really have anywhere we're staying." And he's like, "Well, I mean, you guys can stay with us if you need to." And I was like, "Yeah, we'll let you know. I appreciate it." As if I really had any other options, but I just don't want to feel like people have to feel like they need to. But yeah, I ended up staying with them that night and stayed with them for a few months. And so we were practically living in Mexico, about 10 minutes from the border. And I learned what traffic was because it took 2 hours to get to the clinic, leaving at 6 a.m. to get there at 8 a.m. And it normally would only take 30 minutes. I didn't expect it to be that long. And driving the stick shift, it was kind of not fun to start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. But word kind of got around in the clinic of these Bama boys that called us, traveling across the country and doing this thing. We would intern all day from 8 to like 3:30. We'd work from like 4 to 10, but then you'd have to close. And we didn't work at the same location, so I'd pick him up, he'd pick me up, we'd take turns, and one person might close earlier than the other person. So really, you'd end up being done around 11, get home around 11:30, maybe 12, to get up and leave at 6 a.m. and again the next day. So we were doing this every day, word got around, and the CEO of the company wanted to have breakfast with us to get to know us and hear more of our story in depth. And so we did, and he really connected with us and had a good relationship with him. He said that we reminded him of himself when he was our age. And he ended up paying for the rest of our schooling, so that was an awesome blessing. It seemed like every week something was happening. Then not much longer, the guy who started this whole thing, Egoscue, he wanted to meet with us on Skype, and so we met with him. And he was like, "I want you to quit your jobs." It's like, okay, what do you mean? I don't want to do that. And he paid us to quit our jobs so we could intern full-time. So that was a great blessing. Probably one of the biggest checks I've gotten for not doing anything, at least in my eyes. I didn't earn it, it was a gift. And so I was very grateful for that. And not much longer, they hired us. My first month working there, they flew me to Australia for work. So here I am, Mobile, Alabama. Didn't really think about traveling the world. And I'm in Australia. So you never know where God's going to take you. So it really felt like when I left home and drove out to California, that it was kind of like putting your foot in the Red Sea and God just has to open it. And then 6 months later, I moved to southern Florida to open up a travel clinic, and I stayed there for about 8 months and then drove back to California, lived there for a while, and now I'm back home and I see people on Zoom. And really what I do is I help people move the way that their body's designed to. So, I'm sure you guys believe God has a design for us. He has a perfect design, and He does for our bodies as well. You look at any machine, it has a design. It has a blueprint. When you open up an anatomy book, the body's no different. You have 2 hips, 2 knees, 2 ankles, 2 shoulders. Hopefully you come out that way. That's how God designed us to come out. And they're designed to be in a certain place. When moving pieces of a machine aren't where they're designed to be, it's not going to move and function the way it's supposed to. And then those parts don't last as long as they're supposed to. They start to wear and tear when they're not where they're supposed to be. But bones can only do what muscles tell them to do, and muscles can only do what nerves tell them to do. And so like Brandon was talking about, that all comes down to the brain, what you believe. Like those thoughts are cellular. And that's going to dictate what ends up changing in your body. So I use that term exercise somewhat lightly. There's always something you can do, and you can be met where you're at to restore function back to your body. Your shoulder has certain capabilities it's designed to be able to do, your hip, your knee, your ankle. And the thing is, they're designed exactly the same, not kind of the same. Your left shoulder is just like your right one. You may be right-handed or left-handed, but you shouldn't be left hip to right hip. So like I said, we won't dive into all of the nitty-gritty of that, but that's the basis of what I do, is I see people with all sorts of pain symptoms, whether it's steatosis, all these itises. I don't want to bore you with all these big names, but foot pain, knee pain, hip pain, ankle pain, neck pain, we help people with it, and it's really because we're getting back to the design that God has for us. And so, in the coming weeks, we'll talk about anything you guys want to, and give you guys some helpful tips on how really you can fix yourself. You don't have to go to somebody to fix you. God's given us these principles, and if we follow it, our body can heal. He wants us to be healed. But I do think a big component is that last part. Faith is part of it too. If you believe you can get better, you can. If you don't, it's going to be much harder too. So thank you for your time. I think I went over just a little bit, maybe a minute or two. I appreciate the time, and I look forward to continuing to speak to you guys. Thank you.